welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're all having a lovely Wednesday. The last day in June, which means it is my reading wrap up, the second half of what I did read in June. I've already read 9 books in June before we even get to this one. So if you'd like to go and see what I read at the first half of June, please do click the link below. I don't think I've ever said click the link below. And today I'm going to be talking about the 5 books that I read in the latter half of June. Just a little itch of the old back there. I'll start with an audiobook, which is pretty, it's not my normal reading style, but I enjoyed it nevertheless. And that's Straight Out of Crawley by Romesh Ranganathan. Romesh is a comedian, a UK-based comedian, and a TV presenter. I enjoy his comedy. I didn't know much about his life. I know he appears on a TV programme with his mother. I've never seen that TV programme. But yeah, I was in a situation, you know, when you just need an audiobook. I think I was about to start driving home from work or something. And I was like, I need an audiobook. So I literally went onto Libby and saw what was there. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll give that a go. So I read it, I quite enjoyed it. He obviously narrates it himself. He's very funny, he's very dry in his humour. And yeah, I enjoyed the sort of behind the scenes stuff of programmes that I've seen him on. And hearing his sort of journey and slog at becoming a stand-up comedian. Let me tell you, when I was at university, it was stand-up comedy was sort of like quite a, well, I got into, I don't know, maybe it was just maybe at that age everyone gets into it. So maybe if you'd have asked somebody who's 10 years older than me, they would have said, oh, at university I loved stand-up comedy. But at university I loved stand-up comedy. Actually now, I don't love it so much anymore. I much more prefer sort of like, my brand of like enjoying comedy is hearing 2 mates have a good laugh together. But like, I used to love stand-up comedy and I thought in my head, I could be a stand-up comedian. I never took it any further than sort of like thinking I could do it and writing a few jokes down. But hearing the slog about it and how many late nights there are, I would not have thrived. I would not have thrived. So yeah, I think I'll just stick to booktube videos. But yeah, gave that 3 stars. Next up, another 3-star book was Light for the World to See by Kwame Alexander. This is 3 poems about sort of recent events, all written in the last year, recent events to do with sort of like the Black Lives Matter movement, so George Floyd taking the knee, etc, etc. For me, this is the sort of like poetry I need in terms of the typography and stuff, really enhanced it for me, and that works well for me. But yeah, very well pulled together and very sort of powerful stuff, and interesting as well to sort of read these 3 poems in this different way. So yeah, I gave that 3 stars as well. Then there's a book that I gave 5 stars, and I absolutely loved this book. It was Severance by Ling Ma. I have never read anything quite like this, and the one thing I can say now that I didn't write in my review is that it has been, when did I finish reading this? So it's been a week since I finished this, and I still feel like I'm in the process of reading it. Like, you know when you're reading a book and you think, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. Like, I keep thinking, I wonder what's going to happen next. So if I just tell you what it's about. So it's quite sort of complex, but amazing. So this is the story of Candice, who is working for a publisher and in a sort of like office-based job sourcing, and she works in the Bible department, so she's sourcing sort of stuff for special editions of Bibles, beautiful gemstones to go on one edition, or blue leather to go on another edition. So there's this sort of like monotony of what it's like to work for that sort of publisher and trying to get things done in deadlines and stuff like that. Then you're also hearing about the immigrant experience as her parents came over from China, leaving her at home with her grandparents to set up life in America, and then she came over later. Now both of her parents have died, so she sort of like, what's the word, oarless or rudderless or something, so she's sort of in this country now that she doesn't have any family in, with both of her parents being dead. So you hear about their immigrant experience and what it's like for her and things like that. And then on top of that, so this is all sort of things that happened in the past, or the recent past, this is a zombie novel as well, because in the current, like presently, you're hearing about her journey with a group of survivors who are going to find a facility, the facility to live in, because there's something going around called Shen fever, which is a disease that originated in China, so similar to the coronavirus pandemic we're going through at the moment, but it slows down your brain until you're reduced to just doing stuff with muscle memory. So for example, she walks past so when she's living in New York by herself before she finds this group of survivors, she walks past this beautifully kept sportswear shop which has somebody who has Shen fever inside just folding stuff up and polishing mirrors and stuff, so people just keep to what's in their muscle memory. So yeah, there's sort of like all these different like levels of what's going on, and I just thought it was absolutely sort of amazing. Like I really loved it, and I loved all the levels of it. I loved the sort of sentimentality of hearing about her parents' journey coming over from China. I loved the sort of drama of what was happening at the, like, in the present day with like them going and finding supplies in people's houses and avoiding people with the fevered, they call them, so the people with the fever who aren't interested in them. So it's not a sort of attack, like they don't attack or anything, they're just fevered and just getting on with their daily jobs, but obviously they're slowly wasting away because they're not eating and they're not drinking and things like that. And then combined with the sort of monotony of the office work stuff, I enjoyed that too. I thought it was really sort of clever, and I really liked how the book followed her but was much more about the sort of bigger picture. But I really liked Candice as well, so yeah, I thought this was fantastic. I'm so pleased I read it, and like I say, it's just sort of like I just keep thinking about it, and I keep thinking about them because they eventually do get to the facility, and I keep thinking about what would be happening there and what would be happening to Candice now, and how would she carry on living and things like that. Like, it's just really got me thinking, and it's so readable and so good. I would highly recommend it. Like, one of the best, if not the best book I've read this year. Really thought it was fantastic. Honestly, bloody brilliant. Severance by Ling Ma, loved it. And then next up was the Patreon book club book for this month. We were reading, the genre was Japanese fiction, and we read Norwegian Wood by Murakami. This is the second Murakami book I've read. The first one, I can never remember the full title, but it's Colourless Tezuku, I think, and it might be called And Something, but like that's the only other Murakami I'd read. And as ever, I really enjoyed the discussion we had about this when we were doing the Patreon book club. But for me, this book, I didn't love it. I gave it 2.5 stars. So I think when I rate books, I often like give I sort of like round it down. I guess that's because if I was to give a book a 4.5 star, if I loved a book but then there was just something that I couldn't give it a 5 star, I would then give that a 4 star. So that's probably where it comes into my mind. That's just a little side thought. But yeah, so whilst I found the whole sort of reading experience of this quite mellow, and I found it very readable, I will say that, there was a few points in here which just completely freaked me out and like made me just think that is just not cool. So there's an instance in here, and I sort of have to get quite deep into the plot to tell you how this happens. And, right, let me just say, there's a character in here that the main character Toru meets, and this character is recalling an incident where she was tutoring a 13-year-old girl how to play the piano, and sort of something happens and she ends up having sex with this 13-year-old girl. She claims to have been manipulated by this girl into having sex with her, etc, etc. But the main takeaway from that is that she is then really worried that everyone thinks she's a lesbian. Rather than the fact that she had sex with a 13-year-old girl, she's more concerned about that. That upset me deeply, and that happened sort of basically midway through the book. So I was like, oh God. And then there's a bit at the end where Toru is having sex with someone and describes that person's breasts as like a 13-year-old girl. And I just thought, no. So I didn't love it, and I actually said at the time, oh, maybe I would read some more Murakami, but thinking about it, I think we'll find that Murakami's very formulaic. Mercedes and I have spoken about this before. Like, there's always someone who, like, the main character always likes jazz, there's always a cat, they're always really good at, really good at cooking. Somebody mentioned when we were doing Patreon book club that there's always a well mentioned, but yeah, there were aspects of it, and there's a lot of trigger warning for sort of like loads of suicide in here as well, and grief, and I felt like grief and that was dealt with very well, but I couldn't get away from those references. And also the other sex included in here, because there's a lot of sex in here. It just felt like very sort of, let's plop that in and say some of the more shocking stuff we can get. And yeah, it just felt like very sex written from a man's point of view, like I stuck my dick in and she loved it. That type of thing. Like, there was no effort. It would just put a penis in and she loved it. So yeah, I gave this 2 stars. And yeah, I think probably I'm done with Murakami now, but I did it, and as always, loved the chat, and then just to round off the month, I've been a bit under the weather. I'm actually feeling a bit better now. If you'd have seen my, I think it was my cozy reading night vlog, I mentioned that my niece had brought home from nursery a sickness and diarrhea bug, which she'd given to my sister, given to my brother-in-law, and then I think maybe I got the tail end of that, because apart from eating a banana yesterday, like I barely ate anything yesterday. I hadn't eaten anything sort of all weekend. I had a bit of pizza on Saturday night when it was cozy reading night, and then I haven't really eaten anything since, but I am sort of feeling a bit better. But I always want to read because that's where I get my joy from, but I couldn't settle down to anything. I'm reading, I've got a couple of good books on the go at the moment because you would have seen me start them in cozy reading night. But yeah, you know, are people the same? If you're poorly or if you're a bit under the weather, can you not concentrate on anything? So I wanted something nice. I wanted something that wouldn't take much effort, and I maybe just wanted something that I could really just have a good look at. And that book came to this, which I've read before and gave it 5 stars then, and I've given it 5 stars again. This is Our Rainbow Queen by Sally Hughes, and it was published in 2019, I think. And it's a beautiful book. This would make a fantastic gift, of a collection of what the Queen has worn in her 10 decades of life. So, and it's separated into the rainbow colours. So it starts with red, and it's got all of these lovely outfits she wore. Then we move on to orange. Then there's a better orange page. Then yellow. Then green. That, like, we get the gist through the rainbow, and then there's a good sort of like print section at the end. Let me just show you one of these favourite outfits that she's worn. I can't believe she wore this when she was 70. She looks fantastic. It's a Harlequin sparkly, look at this, go Queen, go Liz. A Harlequin sequin top with a bright yellow skirt. Can you see that? Is that zoomed in? It's going on my face, isn't it? Let's have a look. There we go. So yeah. And this was just exactly what I needed, because I did just want to look at stuff. I did want nice stuff. There's like little bits of information that relate to like what she's wearing at what time, why she might be wearing the brooch she's wearing, who she's with, etc, etc. And I just really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. It was a tonic. It was an absolute tonic. It really, really made me think less about me feeling a bit nauseous, and just made me enjoy it in the moment. So yeah, I read that in the space of an evening, and like basically all of it in the space of an evening, and then finished off the print section the next day. So yeah, really, really enjoyed it. So those are the last 5 books I read in the month of June. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Please try and read Severance by Ling Ma. I absolutely loved it. I really, really, really loved it. And yeah, I'll see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye!